Welcome to the state of survival. The survival game genre is all about research, resource management, and trying to stay in life. Yet all games approach this topic and mechanic quite differently. Let's talk about the full release of Sons of Force and how they handled it. Now, Red, you actually played with us this summer when we were really kind of digging deep
Sure
into
did.
the early access, but we were fraught with problems, issues, and a lot of game mechanics that didn't make sense. What was your view of it now that 1.0 has officially come out?
Um, it's a huge change. I was amazed just looking through the release notes at how much they did, you know, across the board. And then from a performance perspective, I know that most games seem to be optimized for NVIDIA, and they were more optimized for AMD, and that's actually what I'm running. So I did see some improvements, certainly with the full release.
I noticed that my system was running it a lot smoother than it was before, which is huge when you consider the sheer amount of foliage it has. But being able to stream it with NVENC encoding and play the game, my computer was not stressing as much as it used to. But I think what also caught me off guard was the audio improvements because it really felt like a totally different experience.
I was gonna say that for me, um, when I jumped into the new release, that was the big thing that hit me was the audio immersion.
I love the fact that the survival genre is hopping on that now,
Yes.
especially when crossplay with survival games is becoming more and more popular. You don't need to have Discord open. PS, Xbox, PC will all have that same Doppler effect.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's dig into some of the meteor changes that they implemented. So, the paraglider. So I had some experience with that before, but I know during some of the streaming gameplay you guys did, you really had some interesting times with the paraglider, and it looks like they've made
Okay,
some significant
listen.
changes to that.
Me nose diving when I got it off the mountain, that was my fault because normally games don't encourage inverted controls. I was pleasantly surprised to find out it did. But what annoyed me was if you wanted the hang glider and if you're doing those dangerous missions, you had to hold it in your hand. It
Hmm.
wasn't something that so you were limited. So yeah, it's a boon, but I'd rather have a hook rope or something to climb down with. But now it folds and goes in your
Yeah.
inventory. Such a good idea. Such a good idea. Um, one of the things that they've added is it always felt like we were too late when we would find what I like to call a point of interest, kind of like Bethesda games.
Okay. Hmm.
You always arrived, the people were dead. We saw one guy hung himself. We saw one guy fell in a tree, couldn't come down. We saw another team that just must have died because their cigarette was still lit. But
Right.
the first thing I did when I lifted up my GPS is a lot of the points of interest were gone. And they even changed features of the island. But what's cool about it is as you're walking, if those tactical troops that are missing on the island see you,
Hmm.
they'll light a flare and do this to attract your attention. So you'll see them in the distance and you'll go, oh, I think that's a point of interest. It won't show up on your GPS. And it's so creepy because, of course, by the time you get there, they're dead or what have you. But you don't know what's on the way when you see it. And you really only see the flares during like nighttime, maybe dawn and dusk.
Right.
Um, it's like, okay, boys, let's go in there and let's get this. But you're also not the only one that saw it.
Yep.
So
And then so the helicopter and helicopter insertion. So when I played with you guys earlier on,
Mhm.
I was really just getting the kind of one event where I'd always end up just kind of landing on the beach. It was seemed like the same animations, but it looked like that's changed. That there's a variance of that now.
I know that they were having issues with some of the helicopter crashes because when we played it day one, we landed in the water and had to kick our way out of the
Oh,
helicopter,
interesting.
swim up to the surface. Now, you could find these helicopter sites and their points of interest, but it
Sure.
randomizes which of the helicopter sites was your origin point. And after a lot of complaints about the water, people getting stuck under there, people sinking through the game, stepping out onto the beach and seeing artifacting which they have fixed. I'm proud to say.
Okay.
It seemed that after that we always got the mountaintop crash, and the main reason why I didn't like crashing in the snow, even though that scene is so cool where you kick the door out and you're sliding towards the edge and you got to stop yourself, even though that's so cool, I never liked that spot because the river is full of fish.
Right. Well, and then it becomes the luck of the draw as to which site you get. And
Right.
honestly, in some games, that is the case where you can just get a bad spawn, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to make it. And some are luckier than others. But I agree that one was a little over the top because it's like, oh, let's go fishing.
Yeah, and the other cool thing that they've added is they've changed the way that you get wet in the
Hmm.
snow. So you get more wet in the rain. Wetness actually matters, and drying yourself off by a fire works. Remember before we're like, you could stand by the fire, but you'll be there all day.
Exactly.
It's quicker now. And they have winter clothes and stuff like that. So
Okay, that's really cool that they've added that depth of complexity, like you said,
yeah.
because obviously you're just out there, you're getting snowed on, you're not going to get as soaking wet immediately as
Mhm.
you would in rain. But like you said, if you're rolling around in it, that's
And
a
if
whole
you
nother
have
story.
if you have the winter clothes, you can stay up in the snow for a while, but the moment it starts raining up there, you have to get out because the snow
Right.
clothes get wet. There are rain clothes which keep you drier, but they're not very warm. So it's kind of a give and trade. Which leads me to my next observation. We now need more clothes, we now need more tools, and we don't have enough storage. I mean, when we
Oh
were
yeah.
building our base, our storages for the logs and everything like that, it just started taking up. We look like a lumber camp, and trying
Exactly.
to defend them all, we had to rely on those dreaded spike traps, which, or let's be honest, those were poke Red in the butt when he went to go drink water traps.
I was gonna say that was the red trap. That wasn't anything else.
Yeah,
Oh, I got myself again.
but they've really thought about expansion with your base. There's bigger
Hmm.
log storage. There's
Oh,
arrow
nice.
storage that's better. There's explosive storage now. And
Wow.
it gives you reason to bring back all your clothes and have, like, all right, we're going in the snow, gear up. And you actually feel like you're gearing up without taking a huge amount of territory. But also on that note, they know you're going to expand your storages and your buildings. The
Hmm.
traps can now be moved no matter what they are. Now,
Oh,
before you could
nice.
move the spike traps, but the spatulas and stuff, you couldn't
Yeah,
move
you
them.
were
Now
stuck
you can
with.
move them. So I really appreciate that.
Nice. Um, did you notice? So I'm full disclosure, in other games that have base building, I'm Bob the Builder. So I
Mhm.
love building big, elaborate bases for no particular reason, just because I like doing that as part of the gameplay. And it seemed like when I played with you guys and we got into building bases, it was all fairly rudimentary. So like we did a fairly quick and dirty, let's get a place we can sleep. We can put our beds down. And then later it was, well, we'll build a platform, we can throw our beds there. And then it was, like you said, all about the storage and the traps. Um, what changes have you seen that take advantage of building bases in different ways to protect yourself?
Well, one of the changes that I really liked about Sons of Forest versus the Forest one is that they always had that starter log cabin that was never really big
Hmm.
enough. It was super basic.
Yep.
Everybody skipped that. We all built our own custom buildings. When we approached 1.0 this week to try to do that again, our strategy that we did before with Dimension, Dumpgraw, you and I would not have worked. If
Oh,
you do
interesting.
not have a sheltered bed, you will get woken up multiple times in the night, not by two or three, but by a raiding party.
Oh
And
man.
so we realized early on, you either have a bonfire or you put your fires out, and then
Right.
you camp and pray for the best. That's not effective because then you wake up cold. So it encourages you to go, I know these log cabins are basic. Let's get them built. Each of us will have a bed. So now you have log cabins, and it just makes more sense that you have to scramble on getting your base first. Um, I will say that a lot of what we did when we played was food hunting because the fish traps
Yeah.
weren't working very
Yep.
well. Now you don't feel that you're doing that as much. With raccoons and
Okay.
squirrels, you got some meat on hand.
Love me
Um,
some squirrel.
yep, the fish traps work, but you can't over trap a lake or river.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's encouraging, especially during the seasons, like depending on what it is. So you want to build, if there's four players, two fish traps, No more than that. You
Okay.
can't rely
Okay.
on just fishing. Um, and they fixed the the I know I'm kind of jumping around, but this is related to food. Camping on the beach kind of sucked because you'd pull an oyster out of the water and it was rotten. And you're like,
Yes. What the hell is this? Really?
because they used to never rot and now they do rot, but something
Right.
happened where now it's like, oh, great. But it's not so much about gathering as much food as possible because there's the waste. You gather what
Mhm.
you need. uh Farming is more important. Well, if you're going to farm, then you have to build a big base. You have to have those
Yep.
defenses, those walls. And I think you'll be pleased to learn this because this is one of the things you and I were like, that's dumb. Yeah, you could build the walls with the rock,
Mhm.
but it was only walls. They now allow you to build floors. They now allow you to build
Okay.
corner beams with the stone that allows for
Right.
more elaborate
Okay.
structure.
Okay. Very cool. That's yeah, I did notice I haven't played deep enough to really get into the heavy base building, but I did see in the change notes just how much that they added to the base building.
Yeah,
Um,
railings, decorative,
yeah,
comfortable chairs with furs that
exactly.
keep
Yeah.
you warmer. It allows you to rest quicker because when we were playing, you would go out and gather all the sticks and then build the traps, and you'd be exhausted. And then it's like, well, you're tired, so now you don't have any stamina. So if we do get attacked, you're crippled at that point.
Exactly.
Now, if you build yourself a comfy chair, especially if you build a fireplace in your house and you have a nice little cooking pot fire, you can just sit in
Hmm.
that chair, dry up, get rested, and get back to work. So you could take like a 15-minute break
Nice.
and get back in it.
Again, just leaning more into the realism.
And speaking of our struggles, the water before it
Right. Right.
simulated that it was bad water because you drink it and go, "Ugh," and you'd lose health. Right? Ugh.
Yes.
So all of us were it sounded like we were doing a Broadway musical stomp, just going, "Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh." And to your point about loving base building, the camp mom is actually probably the most important person in the team. So
Hmm.
even if you're at home and you're just organizing supplies and you're making sure the fires are fed and you're making sure there's boiled water, that is insurmountably useful to everybody within the group. It doesn't feel like a pointless role. And fires do attract the cannibals unless you have everything indoors. So it's not like you're not being attacked. You still will have an action filled
Oh
experience.
yeah. Well, since you brought up the cannibals, what kind of changes have they made with the enemy, so to speak?
Well, a lot of them have more health now. A lot of them
Oh
are more
no.
a lot of them, because some of the ones that didn't have a lot of health, it's like, why? Why does this gold mask make this one so much
Hmm.
stronger? A lot of them now, I think the reason why they raise the health is there's stun batons now, and there's different ways to hurt the enemies. Arrows are more
Sure.
effective, um, especially flaming arrows. In the forest one, I didn't even bother with them. Flaming arrows now actually will do really good.
Oh,
Dimension went out
nice.
with flaming arrows and two wooden spears, fended off seven of them on his own, and it
Wow.
wasn't easy. He had to
Right.
retreat. He had to eat something. He had to shoot. He had to move. So he ended up separating himself from me quite a bit in the fray, but he was able to survive. Whereas before, it felt like if there were three mutants around you and you were by yourself, you're like, I might as well just
Um.
respawn.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's very well done. They've added two more aliens, Lazy and Halsey, into the mix. They've added a stronger version of Spotty, making it puff.
Okay.
They call it a puffy, and I like to see different variants.
And was so that kind of leads into a question I had as someone, like I said, I didn't really play the forest. Um, I've played Sons of the Forest with you guys and enough to kind of get a feel for the mechanics and that sort of thing, but not deep into the lore and the storyline. So that for me, playing before the full release, there was just lots of things that seemed disjointed, or like I'd see some item or some cutscene and go, "What the hell was that?" I don't have any idea. It's totally
Right.
non sequitur. Um, is this going somewhere? Can you start to see, as someone that's got into a little bit more, is this leading us somewhere?
I think it is. I think it's
Okay.
not only leading us somewhere, but I think it sheds light on some of the mystery around the first game. The first
Okay.
game, we all had a lot of theories on what was going on.
Hmm.
We were wondering how you could have a sequel to this during the early release, they released things like the cube and the golden armor. People knew about those ahead of time and kind of blatantly, okay, it's this. This is the cause. But there were a lot
Right.
of plot holes. How do we get here? Now it seems like with the voice dialogue of some of the antagonists and protagonists, you start to see a lot more of the connected dots of this isn't a corporation that did this on
What?
purpose, right? Like the first game, you're like, is this a corporation that did it on purpose? What
Exactly.
brought us
Yeah.
down? It seems like corporate greed drew them here, but I can't help but feel this story's more like Indiana Jones. They found
Okay.
something that they thought would help their business and didn't understand the thing that put that thing there.
Right.
And I'm trying really carefully to avoid spoilers because I know people didn't do their early access because they were waiting. Um, but I think that's really cool because it encourages you to go into the caves. It encourages you to learn more. It encourages you to scuba dive down to that wreck to get those
Exactly.
items because you're trying to find out why. How do I get out of this situation?
Well, and that's the exciting thing, I guess, to find out is that there is a whole lot more there other than just kind of the day-to-day mechanics of staying alive and trying to thrive, but there's a lot more to find out and learn.
Right?
And that's
Because
what
oh
that's what great
man,
game playing is all about.
it is, and
Is
if you
yeah.
ever play the first game, and I highly recommend you do because it's fantastic. There's
Mhm.
missionaries there, like Christian missionaries. There's
Oh
Bibles all
boy.
over the place and stuff. Your son gets taken off the plane. A lot of the story is fed from you from the perspective of the missionaries, from the perspective
Mhm.
of mercenaries, from the perspective of fishermen, corporate men, and your son who leaves these crazy ass drawings drawn out of crayon, and you're like, okay, my little 5-year-old kid is drawing a giant monster flying in the sky down a beam.
Right.
He's obviously delusional or stressed out. But then the second game kind of connects the dots not only with what we saw in the early access, but also connects a lot of the dots from the first game. The thing is when you kind of evaluate it all, and I think this is the perfect game for you too, casual or hardcore, this is
Mhm.
really indicating there will be a third game. But the
Oh.
cool thing about it is I can't tell you what it's going to be. To the community, we did have a question for you, and it was kind of on all of our minds throughout this entire early access release. With the long early release cycle of The Forest, which was their first game, did that discourage you from trying the early access of Sons of the Forest? And did you wait for the full release for that to jump right in? From all of us here at the State of Survival, thank you so much, Red, for filling in for Dump. Really appreciate you. Want to give
My
huge shout
pleasure.
outs to the producer and everyone from me to you. We'll see you in the future. Bye bye.
Cheers.